somebody being bat bleep crazy, the St. Louis alderwoman Lyda Krewson has announced that she's already filed a bill to ban what she refers to as assault weapons in the city limits of St. Louis because they've got so many problems that this is the one she's got to fix. Did I mention she's running for mayor? Anyway, if the crazies on our city council, if they pass this thing, and it's predominantly Democrats, so they might, in about, what's it say here? In about 90 days, if you had one of these guns and didn't get rid of it, you'd be a criminal. This is what they're doing to you here. I've asked Erich Pratt to join us from the Gun Owners of America because, to me, you've seen things like this pop up in other parts of the country, Erich. How are you?
Doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. This kind of thing it's just unbelievable. I want to try to get her on the air here, although I don't know if she'll come on or not, to try to explain to me what her definition is of an assault weapon. Because I think if somebody gets stabbed with a knife, technically they've been assaulted. So where's she going to draw the line? I mean, as usual, the Post-Dispatch here has done a horrendous job of explaining exactly what this means, and most liberals don't care.
Right. Well, she's doing what liberals do. They want to ban things, control things, tell you how to live your life. And you're absolutely right. They fudge with this whole term assault weapon, because really what they're talking about is commonly owned semi-automatic firearms that have been around for about a century. It's interesting that the New York Times published an article a couple of years ago called The Assault Weapon Myth, and it talked about how the fact that Democrats were the ones that created this term assault weapons, that they've never been the weapon of choice for criminals. You mentioned stabbing. Well, more people get stabbed to death every year than are killed by long guns, of which these so-called assault weapons would be a subcategory of that. So, more knifings than rifles, including these so-called assault weapons. But, the other thing this article pointed out is that the ban was a colossal failure. That ban, which was passed at the federal level in 94, sunset in 2004. So now these guns that they had originally banned for 10 years are now perfectly legal. And guess what? 10 years after the sunset, 2014, it turns out we were much safer. FBI statistics show the murder rate had dropped 18% in that time. So we're actually much safer with these guns being legal. There's no correlation to the fact that banning these types of guns is going to make anybody safer. If she wants to make St. Louis safer, then they need to get rid of the anti-gun Democrat liberal bastion that it's been, and they'll see a turnaround.
Yeah, we've got a guy here who's tried to start a business, an entrepreneur who wanted to start a business with a van parked in front of the baseball games and the hockey games and other events where if you're carrying your concealed weapon and you have to go into the stadium, you could check it in with them in a secure location and then get it when you came back out so that walking to your car you'd be safe. And the city here has put this guy through all kinds of red tape and won't let him start up this business where he would employ people and all this stuff because of their ideology about this. And, I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Absolutely. They are so against people using a gun for self-defense. Look, first of all, St. Louis doesn't even punish murder very well. They are one of the lowest in the nations in terms of actually solving murders. 44% of murders are solved in the city. That's way below the national average. I mean, that's what I'm saying. This Democrat bastion where they're so interested in all the benefits that Democrats love to dole out, they should actually get to the business of doing what government should do, and that's punishing crime and capturing bad guys. But, I remember that story about this guy who's trying to help people defend themselves. And, they would, kind of put their guns there while they go into the stadium. St. Louis, for years, even though the entire state had concealed carry, St. Louis was still making it very difficult for people to get permits. And they are just so opposed to self-defense. It is no wonder the city has, is skyrocketing murder rates, has one of the worst murder rates in the country. Look, you remember Nidal Hassam, the guy at Fort Hood?
Sure.
He fired 220 shots using a pistol. He didn't need an AR-15 or a gun like that. He used a pistol. With a pistol, he shot 220 rounds. And the reason he was able to shoot so many rounds, because nobody was shooting back at him. It was a gun-free zone. If you want to make St. Louis safer, or any of these other places where we see high crime rates safer, stop making them gun-free zones. Stop making it more difficult for good people to defend themselves.
Yeah, it's a great point, because only law-abiding citizens paying attention to the law. So here's my other point, Eric, that I wanted to get you to comment on. By the way, we've got Erich Pratt from Gun Owners of America with us. I've got an AR-15. It's not an AR, but it's like an AR by DPMS, I think, is the maker of it. But if I had a Ruger, like a Mini 14 Ruger that looks like a hunting rifle, it's easy to get extended clips for rifles like that. It would hold just as many rounds as my AR style rifle. But when you have bills like this with this language in it that just calls something an assault weapon, we have no idea what all she may be banning in this bill.
Yeah, and that's some of the great memes that are out there will show the foolishness of these bans, because typically what they go after is exactly what you're saying. They want to demonize the guns that have the black finish, so they look, well, to some, I guess they look mean and menacing. But you could strip that gun down and put the walnut stock on it, and it would look like a hunting rifle, and then the law would leave it alone.
Right.
It basically becomes okay. And it's just utter foolishness, because the gun fires the exact same way as does, by the way, Nidal Hassan's pistol, where he fired 220 rounds. It's the same function. You pull the trigger once, one bullet comes out of the barrel. That's a semi-automatic firearm. This is a real dangerous, slippery slope when which is really what they're trying to do. They're trying to ban a whole set of firearms, and then that's their foot in the door to say, well, look, all these other guns are basically functioning the same way. Let's ban them too.
Yeah, and she uses the famous line in here where these military-style weapons are not used for hunting. In fact, I plan to take my AR-style rifle hunting this weekend. So it just once again speaks to the ignorance of some of these people on the left who don't really understand the issues.
The Second Amendment was never about hunting anyway.
Right,
it was about protecting ourselves against tyranny. So, yeah, she really needs a civics lesson.
Yeah, it's a good point. Eric, before I get done here, tell people who aren't familiar with Gun Owners of America what you guys do and why it's so important for them to support you.
Absolutely. In fact, I encourage people to go to gunowners.org. In fact, you'll see there we're actually giving away an AR-15. So if you really want to stick it to Kirsten here, go ahead and sign up for that. But what we're doing is more than obviously giving away firearms. We are here to defend the Second Amendment, to defend our gun rights, and we're going to have a very proactive agenda this next year with Trump in the presidency. We want to get concealed carry reciprocity around the country. So, I encourage people to go to our website at gunowners.org and sign up for our free email alerts. The more people we have, the louder voice we have in Congress, and that's really what's enabled us to kill a lot of anti-gun legislation during the Obama years.
Yeah, that's a good point. Erich Pratt, thank you as always for the good information.
Hey, thank you, Mark.
Yep.
It's always a pleasure.
Have a good day. I appreciate that. Always good to get Eric and his dad, Larry, on the show here talking about this issue, because, if you live in the city, raise some cane about this. I mean, I work down here. I don't live in the city limits, but if you're a gun owner and you believe in your Second Amendment rights, you got to go raise cane about this, because I'm telling you what, the aldermen in the city of St. Louis, where there's not a Republican to be found, they'll rubber stamp some nonsense like this without ever asking any questions. That's my biggest concern. It's ridiculous. Now, the companion bill that she's introduced would have some requirement that if you leave a gun in a car, then you have to have it secured, like in a lockbox. I got no problem with that as compared to this other bill, because most people should be doing that anyway. If you just leave a gun out in your car or unsecured in a dashboard, that's silly. That's nonsense, and a lot of guns get stolen that way. So you're protecting yourself by buying one of those $20 steel lock boxes that you can get at any gun store. They got a great selection at the Range St. Louis West. Did I mention that? TheRangeSTL.com, one of the supporters of our show. So we thank them for that. Great selection out there.